Check. There aren't many podcasts that I get excited to have. We're about to start a series here on the pod over the next 3 weeks or so as we head into training camp, looking at each and every single division in the NFL. We've already taken a look at the NFC East. We'll do a deep dive on that division numerous times before the season starts, obviously. But we'll do that with the Super Friends. But we're going to take a look at all of the divisions in football, kind of predict what we think is going to ultimately happen in these divisions, and kind of give us a better working knowledge of what these schedules look like and, you know, what these teams are up against as we head into the 2022 season. Seahawks are sniffing around a potential move at the quarterback position. We'll talk about that. Speaking of quarterbacks, Zach, your mom's Wilson, out here slaying moms everywhere. Hide the women and children, man. Zach Wilson's on the prowl. Lot to get to tonight. It's your man, Louie T. Late Night Louie edition. You know what it is. You already know. The Louie T Network podcast starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 275th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm like a Jamaican, man. I got so many different jobs, so many different hats that I wear. I was over on another stream live over on Wangati Talking Sports' channel. Had a blast talking Washington Commanders with him. So if you haven't already done so, check that video out, sub up his channel, and support his movement. But that's the reason I was a little tardy tonight. However, that does not stop me from having the same vigor and excitement that I have for tonight's podcast. Not only are we going to talk about the NFC West, to the victors go the spoils. Super Bowl champions come from that particular division. So we'll start there with the Los Angeles Rams and the rest of the NFC West and how we think that division is going to fare. We're going to look at each and every single one of those teams' schedules. I'm going to talk about some critical points in each of those schedules and talk about, you know, what I think has to happen for those teams to have a successful upcoming 2022 campaign and what I ultimately think is going to happen with each of those teams. So we're going to talk about that here in a second, but I want to start with this and get the somber news out of the way real quick. Marion Barber passed away, I think it was about a good 3 weeks ago now. And we didn't know how. And generally speaking, just like we found out with the Baltimore Ravens edge rusher, Jalen Ferguson, that his was an overdose. Unfortunately, you hate to hear, you know, guys out here doing drugs, you know, mixing fentanyl, and you know how they do. They cut this cocaine with fentanyl now to give guys, you know, more of a high, and this shit is lethal. And unfortunately, he lost his life to that. And, you know, a lot of times when people die at a young age, especially in sports, and we hear about overdoses all the time. That was the first thing that came out with Jalen Ferguson. Now, I didn't want to believe it until, you know, the coroner's report confirmed it, and they did. I was thinking the same thing with Barber. I was like, we're going to find out he died of some kind of overdose, you know, sort of like Vincent Jackson, some kind of, you know, ridiculous off the field stuff, you know, with these guys that can't cope when their careers are over. And we talked about Marion Barber having it tough. You know, Terrence Newman said he saw him, you know, right outside of a Dallas suburb. And he said he didn't know if Marion Barber was going to steal on him, was going to rob him, or what. Like he was sort of standoffish, was in really rough shape. And, you know, it's just tough to hear that, you know, a guy that we saw play in the league. And it's not, I don't like to attribute a lot of stuff to CTE, you know, because that's low hanging fruit. Every time a guy goes, you know, off his rocker off the field that plays football, the first thing we go to is CTE, and it's not always a simple CTE fix. Oh, it's CTE. When Dick Sherman had his episode, everybody went straight to CTE. And that's not always the case. Right? I think Marion Barber's probably did stem from CTE. If I had to guess. He was a guy that played the game as violently as you will see a running back play it. He was physical. He fought for every single yard. That's part of the reason why Cowboys fans fell in love with him. That's part of the reason opposing fans of other teams fell in love with his style of play. I know many a Washington fan that respects the hell out of Marion Barber III's game when he was a member of the Dallas Cowboys, because he was relentless, he was physical, he was ruthless. And, there's a romance to that. People love to romanticize about yesteryear in the NFL and when big hits were all the rage and running backs ran through guys and didn't look to run out of bounds. But there's also something about self-preservation. And ultimately, he died of a heat stroke, though. I said all of that to say this. It wasn't a drug overdose. It wasn't anything of the sort. It was a heat stroke. I'm flabbergasted. Heat stroke? Inside? That's a tough, bitter pill for me to swallow. Like, did you not have AC inside of your house? Like, what do we have going on here? Heat stroke is something that usually happens outside. He was found unresponsive in his home. Now, it could have been exhausted from walking outside and went inside and collapsed. Yeah, that could have happened as well, but just that's crazy. Anyway, gone way too soon. Rest in paradise, Marion Barber III. Let's save the Zach Wilson talk for a little later on in the show. Let's get to the divisions and the schedule. I don't want to start with that because we can go down a slippery slope and spend 35 minutes talking about that before we even get to these divisions. And I don't want to do that. I want to get to these divisions, knock them out first, and then circle back, talk about Zach Wilson, among other topics, to wrap up the show. So what we'll do is we'll jump into our next segment. You know what it is. Don't act brand new. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So let's get into these schedules. We're going to start with the NFC West. Next episode, we'll do the AFC North. And then we'll go from there to the next couple of teams that were eliminated, the Chiefs in the NFC West or AFC West, and so forth and so forth. So this division is very intriguing. On one hand, we know one team is going to stink, more likely than not, in the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams were good, but they weren't dominant last year. So there's this thought that, yeah, they won the Super Bowl last year, but nobody's really afraid of the Rams, right? Matthew Stafford, yeah, he's good, but he damn near led the league in interceptions last year. Like, I don't think anybody's quivering over the prospects of having to take on the Los Angeles Rams. That said, you still have to respect what they did last year, but I don't think anybody looks at them like we looked at the Chiefs after they won the Super Bowl a couple of years back. I don't think anybody looks at them the way we looked at Tampa last year going into the season after winning their Super Bowl. I think they're like, hey, they won the Super Bowl. They're a dangerous team, but they're beatable. So I say that because while I think they're the best team in their division, it's not a foregone conclusion. Arizona, if you recall, was the last undefeated team in the NFL last year. And the 49ers, again, and I've said this a million times, I almost feel dirty saying it again because I feel like I just keep repeating myself over and over again. But again, if Jaquiski Tartt catches that interception that was like a punt that hung in the air forever, if he catches that, more likely than not, the 49ers are going to the Super Bowl, not the Los Angeles Rams. So that 49ers team, they're the most intriguing of any of the teams in the division. We'll get to them a little bit later on, but we're going to go in the order of the way these teams finished in the division a season ago. And of course, the Rams won that division. So we'll start with them. The defending Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams have the toughest schedule statistically of any team in the league going into 2022. And guess what? They should have the toughest strength of schedule. You won the Super Bowl. This is what you get. And so as we take a look at this schedule, I'm just going to be honest with you. I could literally circle the entire schedule and say that it's just a one big ass tough schedule. That's essentially what this thing is. There's really no breaks in this thing. There are opportunities, little, small little pockets that they need to take advantage of, but there aren't any 4 or 5 game stretches where you go, okay, it lightens up here. There are good teams smattered throughout this schedule, which is why it's the toughest in all of football. So let's jump into this. We're going to go through it quickly, and then I'm going to highlight the one pocket that I think is the part of the schedule that I focus in on and what I think could make or break their season. So you look at this Rams schedule. You start with Buffalo on Thursday night. I don't recall being this excited for a Thursday night game. The headliner, the season opener to kick off the season. I can't remember being this excited for one of these since last year. Okay, I was excited for Bucs Cowboys last year. This game is going to rival that. And remember how good that game was last year to kick off the season. Normally, that Thursday night game is a dud. 2 years ago, it was the Texans and the Chiefs. It was ho-humish. It was rainy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the star of that game. You could have went to sleep in the first quarter, woke up in the fourth quarter, and you didn't miss a thing. That's usually how these Thursday night games go. This is going to be a treat. Two of the more higher scoring offenses in the league, two of the most high-powered offenses in the league squaring off. Should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of fireworks right out of the gate with, a quarterback that I think has MVP aspirations in Josh Allen, and a quarterback who's looking to cement his legacy in Matthew Stafford after winning a Super Bowl. Should be a lot of fun week 1. Home for Atlanta in week 2, at Arizona week 3, at San Francisco on a Monday night in week number 4. So right out of the gates, first 4 weeks of the season, they've already got 2 prime timers. Home for Dallas in week 5, home for Carolina. Then they hit their week 7 bye. That's a really good bye if you're the Los Angeles Rams. Come off the bye, week 8, home for San Francisco, at Tampa Bay in week 9. That'll be a big matchup because those will probably be 2 of the teams that we'll be looking at as Super Bowl contenders in the NFC. So that'll be a measuring stick game there for both of those teams involved. Week 10, home for Arizona, at New Orleans in week 11, at Kansas City. That's a big matchup there because we still think the Chiefs are one of the best teams in the AFC. And we'll know by the time we get to week 12 whether the Chiefs are still legit Super Bowl contenders or not. Same could be said for the Rams. That could be a Super Bowl preview of sorts. It'll definitely be one to circle on the calendar. Week 13, home for Seattle, at Vegas, home for Vegas on a Thursday night late in the season, week 14. The following week, you're at Green Bay on a Monday night. So you go Thursday night, then Monday night. So you're getting a long break in between that game and then an extra day to prepare for the Packers on the road. Remember, those 2 teams met in the playoffs 2 years ago. Packers took care of the Rams. So a little bit of unfinished business there. And then again, 2 of the better teams in the NFC squaring off, or at least we think going into the season squaring off. That could have playoff implications as well. Week 16, home for Denver, at Chargers. That's a Sunday night football game as of right now, obviously subject to change as you get late into the season. And then at the Seattle Seahawks to finish up in week 18. So as I mentioned, that schedule is just brutal. Okay. There are no breaks. There are no stretches of football where you say, okay, they got 3 out of 4 there against some teams that they can handle. There's not a stretch like that in this whole schedule. As you go up and down, their division is good. So even when they throw in a couple of division teams, that doesn't break up playing against Dallas or playing up against Kansas City or Green Bay or the Chargers. And then they play the toughest division in football, which is the AFC West. So it doesn't make it any easier. It's just tough throughout for the Los Angeles Rams. So for me, the the stretch of football that I'm focusing in on, and really that's the case with every team in this division, is the first pocket of games before the bye. The first 6 weeks of the season prior to the bye for the Rams, weeks 1 through 6. I find this to be very interesting. We're going to find out a lot about the Los Angeles Rams right out of the gate. How good are they? They're going to get everyone's best. This is the difference between being the hunter and the hunted. Last year, they were the hunter. They were hunting after Tampa Bay. Remember, they had that big early season matchup in which they beat up the Buccaneers in Los Angeles last year. Now they're the team that everyone's going to get up for. They're the team everyone's going to bring their A game because they're everyone's measuring stick. You're getting, in your first 6 weeks of the season, you're getting 4 playoff teams from a season ago out of your first 6 weeks of football. Home for Buffalo on a Thursday night to kick off the season. Atlanta is one of the playoff teams or teams that did not make the playoffs last year, but then it's at Arizona, team that made the playoffs that you actually disposed of in the postseason last year in the first round. At San Francisco, a team that up until the NFC Championship game, you had lost 6 or 7 straight games to. So that's been a house of horrors for you on the road at San Francisco. That's on a Monday night. That'll be your first look at Trey Lance as well. And then home for Dallas. And then the last team before the bye is Carolina, a team that did not make the playoffs last year. So it's going to be a tough stretch there right out of the gate. We're going to find out just how good these Rams truly are. Buffalo, Arizona, San Francisco, Dallas, all playoff teams from last year. How do they come out of that stretch? To me, no worse than 4-2. If you're elite, if you're really serious about defending your crown, 5-1 out of that stretch or better. 3-3, and that speaks to me a little bit that maybe this Rams team isn't as good as advertised. So I think that's going to be a big stretch. But like I said, this schedule is just tough up and down. I mean, come out of by San Francisco, Tampa Bay, Arizona. All right. Then you say, okay, they got New Orleans. I don't know how good New Orleans is going to be. Kansas City right after that, on the road. You get to the back end of the schedule. You go, okay, Seattle, that should be a gimme at the crib. But then turn around, Vegas, at home, at Green Bay, versus Denver at home, which is another big-time matchup there. At the Chargers on a Sunday night late in the season. We think the Chargers are going to be good this year, and then you finish up at Seattle. So it's just a brutal schedule. But if the Rams are legitimate, they'll find their way through the schedule. They'll navigate it, and they'll come out of this thing no worse than 11-6, which is what I have them going on this slate. Good enough to make the playoffs. We'll see if it's good enough to win the division. Arizona Cardinals. This is a team that intrigues me because of the offseason that they've had with Kyler Murray. Obviously, he wants a deal. There are some circumstances surrounding that situation that make it interesting. You lose Christian Kirk. You lose Chandler Jones. It's a different football team than it was a year ago, but now they're going to have to ask some of the young guys to step up. You trade for Hollywood Brown. We'll see how this season goes for them. I don't necessarily worry about them offensively. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is out for the first 6 games of the season. I don't really worry about them offensively. I worry about them more so defensively. We'll see. Losing Chandler Jones, that's a huge loss. We'll see if they can get anything out of J.J. Watt. He was injured for most of the season last year. Anyway, let's run through this thing quickly, and then I'll talk about the stretch of games that I think is going to really go a long way in determining what kind of season the Arizona Cardinals turn in 2022. Kansas City right out of the gate, so you don't get any breaks to start your season. At least it's at home, but it's still the Chiefs. To start week 1, you could easily start 0-1 on the season. And remember, the Cardinals were awful at home last season. They were a much better road team than they were a home team. If they're going to be better this year, that's one of the things they need to clean up, is finding a way to win at home against good opponents like Kansas City. At Vegas the following week, home for the Rams in week 3, at Carolina in week 4, home for Philadelphia week 5, at Seattle. That completes the first 6 games of the season without DeAndre Hopkins. He'll be back on in week 7 versus New Orleans at home on a Thursday night. So that'll be his first action of the 2022 season. At Minnesota week 8, home for Seattle in week 9, at the Rams in week 10, home for San Francisco in week 11. That's a Monday night game that will be played in Mexico City. So effectively, that is a quote unquote home game for the Arizona Cardinals. but it will be in Mexico City on a Monday night. Versus the Chargers at home in week number 12. Then they get their bye week in week 13, so it's a late bye for the Arizona Cardinals. They come off that bye, and they get an extra day to prepare for the New England Patriots on a Monday night at home. So that'll be a fun game there. At Denver, week number 15. Home for Tampa Bay, week 16. At Atlanta, week 17. At San Francisco, week 18. So this is, again, it's a tough schedule any way you slice it because you're playing the AFC West. There's no way around it. Your division is tough as is. 2 times against San Francisco, 2 times against the Rams. And look, even though Seattle's going to be probably down this year, still family business, no telling what's going to happen in that football game. Then you add in the fact that you've got to play Kansas City, Denver, Vegas, and the Chargers. It's just brutal. There's no way to slice it, okay? There's no way around it. You got 4 teams, 4 games against teams that made the playoffs in your division, 2 against Seattle, or 2 against San Francisco, 2 against the Rams, and then you got 4 games against what is just the most brutal division in football. That's 8 games, more than right around half of your schedule right there are against quality opponents. And then you sprinkle in Tampa Bay because you play the NFC South. That division, we don't really know about the other teams in that division. New Orleans still can play some defense. We'll see what their offense is about. They've made improvements on that side of football. So you got Tampa, New Orleans on the schedule. It's just tough, right? That said, sprinkle in, Philadelphia because you both finished second in your respective divisions. It's a tough schedule. That said, the first 6 games without DeAndre Hopkins is what I want to highlight because their schedule is very similar to that of Washington. If you look at it from this perspective, it's the opposite of Washington in the sense that Washington finishes up their season 3 out of 4 at home. The Arizona Cardinals finish up their final 3 out of 4 on the road, but it's home away, home away, home away, home away, home away. And then you get to week 11 and 12 and you play 2 straight home games for the first time all season long, play 3 out of 4 at the crib in that stretch. And then you finish up the season playing 3 out of 4 on the road. So that's the difference. But this first 6 games of the season, this stretch without DeAndre Hopkins, it couldn't have come at a worse time. This is the toughest part of your schedule and you won't have your best football player. Home for Kansas City, at Vegas, home for the Rams, at Carolina, home for Philadelphia, at Seattle. 4 out of your first 6 games, I said the same thing for the Rams. 4 out of the first 6 games are against playoff teams from a season ago. And not just any playoff teams, really good teams that have made improvements to their roster that are out for blood in the upcoming season. The Chiefs are, you say what you want about the Tyreek Hill trade. I think they're an improved football team. And I think they have more weapons now than when they had Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying that they're going to be more explosive, but I think they could be more dangerous because now you're going to see Mahomes have to spread the football around. The Vegas Raiders obviously are much improved with the addition of Devontae Adams. That offense has a chance to be dynamic, especially with head coach Josh McDaniels taking over and really infusing some, what I think is youth and excitement into that offense. Whereas with Gruden, it seemed like they were stuck in the 90s. Rams, week 3, Super Bowl defending champions. You got Panthers in week 4 on the road. Home for Philadelphia. That's a team that's vastly improved. We don't really know what you're going to get out of the quarterback position, but still it's a much improved roster. And then home for at Seattle, which is going to be tough. Even though it's a very winnable football game, it's still at Seattle. So of your first 6 games without DeAndre Hopkins, 4 against, playoff teams from a season ago. And then the 2 games that aren't playoff teams, they're both on the road. So it's a tough stretch of football. And you're going to have to navigate it. To me, no worse than 3-3. Out of this, if you come out of this stretch 3-3, you're going to be just fine. Anything less than that, and you could be in trouble. You could have dug yourself a hole that might be too tough of a hole to climb out of. Because I think this division is going to be tough across the board. I don't think anybody in this division is going to, win 13 or 14 games or anything crazy like that. I think these teams are going to beat up on each other within this division. I don't see anybody going 6-0 in the division. I see everybody taking at least 1 or 2 lumps within the division. So I think this is going to be a tough division to navigate, and it's a tough schedule to have to navigate. A lot of mind landmines in this schedule. If you're Arizona, you got to find a way to come out of the first, 6 games of the season, no worse than 3-3. If you can do that, you look at the first game he comes back, home for New Orleans on a Thursday night. It's a winnable football game. Don't know if you're going to win it or not, but that's a winnable football game. At Minnesota the following week, home for Seattle after that. So there's a little stretch there, a little pocket where if you're 3-3 and you can win 2 out of your next 3 games, just like that, you're 5-4. You win all 3 of those games, just like that, you're 6-3. You see what I'm saying? So if you come out of that first 6-game stretch at 2-4, but then you win 3 out of 4, 2 out of 3 your next out of your next 3 contests, you win 2 out of 3 of those, you're still just at 500. Or as a matter of fact, you are below 500 by a game. You're still, if I'm not mistaken, at that point 4-5. So this is why it is important for you to start, because after that stretch, those 3 games, then it's at Rams, home for San Francisco. That's over in Mexico City, so it's not truly a home game. And then home for the Chargers, come off the bye, home for the New England Patriots, and then at Denver. You got 3 straight home games. Right, even though the Mexico City game doesn't really count as a home game, on the calendar it counts as a home game. But they're all tough opponents: San Francisco, Chargers, Patriots, and then Broncos. I mean, you get to that stretch, you're under 500. Your season could be done because you could lose 3 out of your next 4. So it is imperative that you come out of that first stretch of games at 3-3 or better. I think you will navigate that stretch, come out of that 3-3 or better, and I think you end up 10-7 on the season, just like you did last year. If I'm not mistaken, you were 10-7. You might have been 11-6. 49ers. This is a team that was in the NFC Championship game against the Rams. Let's go through their schedule really fast and take a look at what the 49ers have. This is the team that I'm most intrigued by heading into the season because of Trey Lance. Let's just keep it a buck. Trey Lance, we have no idea what he's going to be for the 49ers. I have the utmost confidence in Kyle Shanahan and his ability to get the most out of a talent like Trey Lance, which is why when that 2021 draft was on the horizon, I said the best player to fit the Kyle Shanahan offense is Trey Lance because of his skill set and Kyle Shanahan's ability to get the most out of players with a skill set like a Trey Lance. So I'm excited to see what this looks like. I'm excited to see if Trey Lance can live up to the hype. Remember, this is a guy that only played 1 year of college football, so very inexperienced. But I think this guy has what it takes to lead this 49ers team to, a winning record in his first year as a starter. But it's not going to be easy. That is for sure. And they still got some unfinished business with Jimmy Garoppolo. What are they going to do there? I don't think he's going to be on the roster when training camp rolls around. Either they're going to release him or they're going to trade him. They don't want to release him. I know they don't want to release him, but something's got to be done. I don't think he's going to be a member of the San Francisco 49ers by the time training camp rolls around. So I think they've got roughly about 2 weeks to figure something out before something will be done there. But anyway, let's run through the schedule. Then we'll talk about the pocket of games that I think will make or break this 49ers campaign. At Chicago to start the season off, very winnable football game there. Home for Seattle week 2, at Denver on a Sunday night, week 3, home for the Rams week 4 on a Monday night. That'll be a very intriguing game to say the least. At Carolina week 5, at Atlanta, a couple of NFC South opponents that are very, very doable on the road in a row there. Home for Kansas City, at the Rams in week 8 as you approach your bye week. In week 9, come off the bye, Chargers on a Sunday night at the crib. That should be a fun game there. At Arizona, Monday Night Football, Mexico City. So again, not truly a road game, and I would assume that there will be a ton of 49ers fans in Mexico City, maybe even more than the Arizona Cardinals fans. So that'll be interesting to see what percentage of the fans there root for Arizona versus San Francisco. I would like to think more 49ers fans will be in attendance than that of the Arizona Cardinals. I could be wrong there, though. New Orleans at the crib in week 12. Week 13, home for Miami. Week 14, home for Tampa Bay. So as you can see, 3 straight home games, weeks 12, 13, and 14. And really, if you want to stretch it out, 4 out of 5 stretch there of home games, which means we're going to talk about this, a lot of road games to start the season off. That's why they're recouping all of these home games late in the season. Home for Tampa Bay week 14, at Seattle on a Thursday night. So the 49ers getting their full 5-game primetime allotment. They're one of those, I don't want to call them blue blood teams, but they're one of those teams that when they're good, the NFL is going to put them on. They are a cash cow and a ratings machine. When they're good, it's good for the NFL. So as you can see, they make it to the NFC Championship game, 5 primetime games for the 49ers. Home for Washington in week 16, at Vegas in week 17, finish up the season home for Arizona. So I want to go back to the first 8 games of the season right before the bye. So the 49ers, I talked about all of those home games, 4 out of 5 home games, weeks 12 through 16. They played 4 home games out of a 5-game stretch there. So that's a ton of home cooking late in the season. Why is that possible? Because of their first 8 games of the season, 5 of them are on the road. So that's not an easy road to navigate. I want you to focus less on the opponents because this isn't a murderer's row of opponents that they're facing to start the season off. Unlike Arizona and the Rams, where they're playing a bunch of playoff teams, this is not a murderer's row schedule here. This is a very navigatable schedule if you're the 49ers. But what I do want you to focus on is the amount of road games. Road games are tough. I don't care who the opponent is. I also want you to focus in on the travel of these road games. Unlike the Rams and the Cardinals, once again, not a lot of traveling back and forth to the East Coast for the Rams or the Cardinals. The 49ers got the short end of the stick. They'll be making a lot of treks out east. Same with the Seattle Seahawks. They'll be making a lot of those treks out to the East Coast. So when you look at Chicago, that's a game you're traveling east for. At Carolina, traveling east. They may just take that Carolina and Atlanta games, package those up, and just travel east one time and not come back home until after that stretch of games, because to travel for that, Carolina game, come back home, travel again for the Atlanta game, that's tough. And then again, having to travel east once more for the Chiefs game. Not as far though. You're just going to Missouri there, but that's quite a bit of travel to the east early in the season. Chicago, Carolina, Atlanta. And so again, Chicago wasn't a playoff team last year. Denver wasn't a playoff team last year. Carolina, Atlanta weren't playoff teams last year. So those aren't tough games necessarily, mentally, but those are road games nonetheless. And Denver is going to be a much improved opponent. So those first 8 games are vital to the success of the season for the 49ers, because last year they got off to a slow start and kind of were mulling around 500. They would be under 500 by a game or two. Then they would be hovering around 500. Then they would lose a game. Then they looked like they were out of it. Then they won 3 in a row and they get over 500. And then you look up, they are at 500 with like 5 games left. You're like, why not us? You can't do that shit this year. Okay. And not to say that the NFC is this juggernaut of a conference, but with a quarterback like Trey Lance, confidence is everything. You need to get off to a good start so that he can see the results, the fruit of his labor, and gain confidence. What you don't want to have him do is lose games early on, have the crowd start getting on him. You start questioning did the 49ers make the right decision, all the guys that they pass, especially if you're looking around and seeing, a guy like Mac Jones have success. Did we make, because remember, the word out on the street was Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones and everybody else wanted Trey Lance. So we're going to see how this kind of plays out for the 49ers. This is a very, doable stretch of football to start these first 8 weeks of the season. I easily could see the 49ers navigating this and being 5-3. No worse than 4-4, however, but 5-3 is really what you should be coming out of this stretch of ball games with the young quarterback. Home for Kansas City is going to be tough. Home for the Rams, a team that you've owned in the past. We'll see if, Trey Lance can continue that trend, or if that loss in the championship game starts to turn the tide in the favor of the Rams. And then at Denver, I think is a game that's going to just be brutal for you to go and get Russell Wilson and company there. But and you got the Rams again. You got the Rams twice in the first 8 weeks of the season. So who's to say what happens in both of those games? You may split, you may get swept, you may do the sweeping. Who's to say? But it's a portion of the schedule that I think is important. It's vital to the success of this team upcoming in the season, because you want to see the success. You want to see this quarterback take strides in the right direction. And there are going to be opportunities to do that, including week 1 on the road at Chicago. 2 quarterbacks from that 2021 draft class locking horns in week 1. I've got the 49ers finishing the season 9-8. I think they're going to be right there. And if a game or 2 swings in their favor, they could easily be 10-7 right there, jockeying for position with Arizona in this division. But I do not see them qualifying for postseason play. And then the Seattle Seahawks. We know this is going to be a down season for Seattle. We know that they're sniffing around Jimmy Garoppolo as an option at the quarterback position. We know a lot of things about the Seattle Seahawks. What we don't know right now is who's going to play quarterback, and we don't know how they're going to respond to life after Russell Wilson. I'd like to think it's going to be rough. It's funny, you see a guy like Jamal Adams, who's going to be now the guy that's at the forefront of everything Seattle Seahawks. And, you feel bad for him. I don't. He forced his way out of New York, but he left New York because he was tired of losing, and he wanted to go to an organization where he's going to have a chance to win. And how ironic is it that he leaves the Jets, goes to Seattle, has a couple of years that he plays with Russell Wilson, and now Russell Wilson is gone, and he's pretty much back in the same predicament that he was in before he got to New York or got to Seattle, that he was with the Jets with, whereas they don't have a quarterback, they suck, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel right now. So we'll see what happens, but we'll go through their schedule real quick. Home for Denver on a Monday night, so they're right out of the gate. They're not wasting any time. They got Russell Wilson returning to the scene of the crime. The crowd is going to be overwhelmingly supportive of Russell Wilson, I'd like to think. They're going to, get on him once the game starts, but they're going to have a lot of love for Russ, and they're going to get destroyed in that game. That's going to be the Broncos coming out party. This new look offense with Russell Wilson at the helm, they are going to smoke those boys in week 1. It's going to be ugly. At San Francisco week 2, home for Atlanta week 3, at Detroit week 4, at New Orleans week 5, home for Arizona week 6, at the Chargers week 7, home for the Giants week 8, at Arizona week 9, at Tampa Bay. But however, that game is in Germany. The first time the NFL has played a regular season game in Germany. So that will be interesting to see how that turns out. But they play over in Germany, and they get a bye week after that. Come off the bye, home for the Vegas Raiders. Week 13 at the Rams. Week 14, home for Carolina. Week 15, home for San Francisco. That is on a Thursday night. Week 16 at Kansas City. That is a Saturday night football game. Week 17, home for the Jets. Week 18, home for the Rams. So when you look at this schedule, it is actually not a brutal schedule. It's a very doable schedule if the Seahawks are half decent. The question is, are they going to be half decent? Because, after the first 2 games of the season, I expect you to be 0-2. Lose to Denver, go to San Francisco, lose that football game, and you're 0-2. But after that, you get Atlanta at the crib. That is a very winnable football game. Then you get Detroit at Detroit, and then at New Orleans. I'm going to just say this. I expect you to be 0-2 after the first 2 games. But then you have a chance to go 2-0 the next 2 weeks and get back to 500. If you can do that, you will have a fighting chance to be relevant for most of the season, okay? I'm not saying that you're going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying that you're going to threaten to make the playoffs, but you will be relevant. When they put up in the hunt, you will still be all the way at the bottom, even though you probably shouldn't be on the screen. You will still be on the screen because mathematically you have not been eliminated yet. If you come out of that first 4 games of the season stretch at anything less than 2-2, your season is going down the drain faster than a faucet that just had Drano poured down it. Your season is going to absolutely crater and tank, and you're going to be one of the worst teams in football. Because if you can't beat Atlanta at the crib, if you can't go to Detroit and find a way to win, and Detroit is saying the same thing about you, and we better beat Seattle, right? So again, if you can't find a way to get it done against Detroit, then you're probably not going to go to New Orleans and win. If you can't beat Detroit on the road, you're probably going to beat New Orleans on the road. Then it starts to snowball. Now all of a sudden you're expecting to lose games. You lose it, at home against Arizona. The Chargers come to town, or you go to LA, get smacked around. The Giants, that's another winnable football game, and this is why it's important that you go, to 2-2, because you could go to New Orleans and win. You win 2 in a row, you playing with some confidence, you won winners of 2 straight, you can go to New Orleans and make it 3. Now you're over 500. Who's to say you don't beat Arizona at the crib? And now you're 4-2. Oh no, who expected the Seattle Seahawks to be 4-2 after 6 weeks of football? You probably won't beat the Chargers, but then after that, you got the Giants at the crib. Why can't you beat them? You know what I'm saying? You have a chance to keep your head above water, or at least tread water, if you come out of that first 4 weeks of the season 2-2 or better than that, which I don't see you being better than 2-2, but it's going to get harder, and eventually you're going to fall off a cliff because you're just not good enough to sustain, the kind of football that is going to require you to play in order to make the postseason. At Arizona, at Tampa, but it doesn't matter where that game's played. That game could be played on the moon. You're not beating Tampa Bay if Tom Brady's healthy. You come off the bye, you're home for Vegas, probably not going to beat them. You never know. We'll see what the Raiders are. You're then at the Rams, home for Carolina, winnable game, but then home for San Francisco on a Thursday night. Again, winnable game is at the crib, but highly unlikely. At Kansas City, no way. The Jets to, at home, winnable football game, and then home for the Rams. At the end of the day, it's just too many good football teams. You're not going to be able to beat them, but you can make yourself relevant. You don't have to be playing meaningless football back end of October. That's up to you if you want to do that. You'll determine that by how you handle September. If you handle September accordingly by going 2-2 or better, you're going to have a chance to play meaningful football into November, okay? You come out of that stretch 1-3 or 0-4, your season's done before we even get to the midpoint of October. You're done. So I got Seattle going 6-11 this season. I can't see how they're going to be a good football team this year, and I think they're preparing for the future. I've got the Rams winning this division at 11-6. I've got the Cardinals finishing in second, 10-7. 49ers at 9-8. Seahawks at 6-11. So you guys tell me what you think about that division and what do you see happening? Seahawks, I think they're going to be a little bit better than people think. We just assume Geno Smith, Drew Lock, those two stink. They're going to be garbage. The rest of that roster isn't terrible. It's not a great roster, but it's not as bad as you think. They've got receivers, okay? I expect them to get something out of Dwayne Eskridge this year. He got nothing out of him, dealt with an injury, wasn't a guy that, was really productive in his rookie season, but still got DK Metcalf. They'll figure out whatever they need to figure out with him to get him on the field. Still have Tyler Lockett, and I think they're going to get something out of Dwayne Eskridge. They actually have pieces offensively. They've tried to fortify that offensive line. They did some work there in the first round this past year. We'll see if they can get everything together and then just kind of insulate that quarterback position, and protect it as much as possible. If they can play some quality defense, run the football, they could be in the mix, in some games and maybe still 1 or 2 that we don't think. But anyway, I got them bringing up the rear in that division at 6-11. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section as we transition to social media maneuvers. I'm a midnight marauder, as you guys already know. So let's see what you guys have to say. If you're out there and you want to have your comment read, you know how to have that done. For those of you who do not, you're new to the party, welcome. Use the super chat function to have your comment read on the air and jump straight to the front of the line. If you don't mind waiting in line, possibly having your comment being, missed because it's too far, in the back of the line, but still, nonetheless, you never know. Use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. Hashtag LouieTLive. Get to as many of those as possible. Let's see. Take command for life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Take command for life. Writes, I'll give you the real records later, but 0-17 Seahawks. They're not going to be that terrible. Again, their roster isn't as bad as some of the teams that we've seen. Hell, Washington back in 19 had one of the worst rosters I've seen assembled in quite some time, and they still won 3 games. So in this league, you're generally going to, and the Seahawks aren't a terrible organization. They've been solid for a very long time. Obviously, not having Russell Wilson changes everything. If you insert him on that football team, we're talking about them being a playoff team. That's the importance of having a guy like Russell Wilson. You take him off the team, and all of a sudden, they're one of the worst teams in football. That said, they still have pride about themselves. They still have guys that know how to get it done. I still think they're going to be competitive and win some games. But how many? We'll see. Got another super chat here from Silver Villains. My guy, Silver V. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Silver V writes, after the split, all we heard was Brady versus Belichick, but no noise about Russell versus Carroll. We're going to find out if Pete's on the same tier as Reed, Tomlin, and Peyton, or is he just another Mike McCarthy? I think we know the answer to that, but, I guess there will be some semblance of an answer, but I don't think it's none of these quarterback coach relationship situations are ever as, cut and dry as, hey, this guy was the reason they were winning. This other guy can't do it, whether it's the player or the coach. I don't think it's ever, that black and white. There's definitely gray area when you're talking about a combination of coach and player and quarterback in particular. As we're having a discussion now, there's always a gray area because both of those guys succeeded because of each other's greatness. And Brady wouldn't have been as successful without Belichick. Belichick definitely would not have been as successful without Brady. So it goes both ways. Same thing could be said for Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. Should have won 2 Super Bowls. That's on Pete Carroll, not running the football with Marshawn Lynch and beating the New England Patriots. But to get to 2 Super Bowls, to almost get to one in Russell Wilson's rookie season, they literally had the Atlanta Falcons on the ropes and would have been going to San Francisco the following week with a chance to go to the Super Bowl on the line. To do that in his first 3 seasons, to make it to 2 Super Bowls and win one, was remarkable. For them to in 9 seasons make it to the playoffs 8 times, again, remarkable. So, look, Pete Carroll can coach. To what extent, we're going to find out. I don't think he is in the same category as, Andy Reid and Sean Payton, but I think he might be in that Tomlin discussion. I think him and Mike Tomlin are very similar in their records. Both winning coaches, both had the privilege of coaching Hall of Fame quarterbacks and not really having to worry about that position. Tomlin has shown, however, and this is what, he's going to get an opportunity to show now. Tomlin has shown, however, that when Ben Roethlisberger was injured, that he could still keep the ship afloat with no matter who, including a guy named Duck Hodges. We've seen him run the gamut from Landry Jones to Duck Hodges to Mason Rudolph. You name it, he's had to do it at the quarterback position when Ben Roethlisberger has gotten injured, and he's always found a way to navigate his way to at least a 500 record, never letting the rope go, so to speak. I thought they fought hard for Pete Carroll down the stretch last year when Russell Wilson came back from that injury. But we're going to see what Pete's made of. You're absolutely spot on about that. I don't think it'll be as much of a referendum on, him or Russ either way. We all know that the vast majority of the success in Seattle was Russell Wilson. We're all aware of that. You take him out of the equation and they go back to the Tavares Jackson days. They're not that far removed from, signing Matt Flynn and hoping he was the answer at the quarterback position. They go right back to being that team. Like literally that's where they are. 6-7 wins. Nobody's really concerned about them. That's where they'll be, until they figure out the quarterback position. So we'll see. I don't think he's not a Mike McCarthy. You got to give Pete Carroll more credit than that. Not only did he turn around that USC program, whether he did it legally or not, that's a different discussion for a different day, but they were a superpower in college football. The Pac-10 was then, now Pac-12 might not be anymore, but and USC program in particular has never reached those heights since Pete Carroll has left. And he's taken the Seattle Seahawks organization to heights it's never seen before. So got to give him credit for that, for sure. Let's see. I got a super chat here. This one, let me make sure I didn't miss any before I jump into it. All right. This one is from Morbidly Obese Male. Lord have mercy. No, I come back to that one. This one is from John Graves the third. Thank you for the super chat, JG3. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy JG3 writes, "Hey Lou, thanks for keeping me entertained and informed during my night shift. Did you get my email last week?" I did. I actually have to finish reading it. I don't know what happened to it. Me and my wife were like kind of like flabbergasted. It just went away. Somehow it got muted. We were able to recover it. So I have to go back and read the rest of it. But excuse me, I'm looking forward to reading it because I was right in the middle of reading your email. I got a phone call and then somehow it got muted and I couldn't find it. So we just found it. So I'm going to read the rest of it. But I appreciate you reaching out. And I look forward to getting back to you. And I appreciate you, all of you out there that support the Louie T Network. It's going on 11 o'clock on the East Coast, and y'all are still 150 deep supporting the kid. Really do truly appreciate each and every single one of you guys for all of the support. So thank you, John. And I'm glad I could be of some assistance to you, during your night shift. Anything I can do to help support, I'm here for it. So thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, John Graves the third. Morbidly obese male. So morbidly obese male. We know who this is more likely than not. My guy, Fat American. He was just over on Juan Gotti Talking Sports' channel. So I assume this is him, alter ego, different name, same guy. My guy, Fat American, aka morbidly obese male, writes, "Lou, could Prime Tyson beat Fury? Please say yes." Yeah, I think he could. Now, here's the thing. Tyson Fury is a much better boxer than people give him credit for. Obviously, a much bigger man than Mike Tyson, has a stiff jab, and he may have been able to keep Mike Tyson at bay. However, if Mike Tyson was able to get inside, and we're talking prime Tyson, not the Tyson after the prison stint. We're talking prime Tyson, Customato, spilling into a little bit of Teddy Atlas, Mike Tyson. If you're talking that Tyson, yeah, he beats Tyson Fury because he's going to eventually get inside and get to Fury's chin. And we've seen that when that chin gets touched, he can go down. Wilder caught him a couple of times and put him on the seat of his pants. So we know he can be knocked down and potentially out. Same thing could be said for Mike Tyson, though, is that we've seen his chin be touched, and we know Tyson Fury has enough power to put him down. And so it could go both ways. I would go with a prime Mike Tyson. I would go with him over Tyson Fury. But you tell me post jail Mike Tyson, I'm going with Tyson Fury, not Mike Tyson. So now there was a lot of Tyson talk right there, right? Tyson Fury, Mike Tyson could be a little confusing. Hopefully it was not. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Red Wings 01 writes, the moment the whole Zach Wilson news came out, I knew Dax was about to get some heat. But man, I've seen a load of insults and death threats thrown at him. Funny people are fawning over a dude who cheated on his girl. So let's talk about it. I said I was going to push it back, and you brought it up. So let's talk about it. Look, there aren't many opportunities for off the field stuff to be relevant and come to the forefront. But this is the time. If there were ever a time for something like this to actually be a headliner, it'd be right now. This is the deadest period you're going to get, the calm before the storm of the NFL season. Everyone's on break. So any news is big news, especially when you get some old American Pie type shit going on. This thing is, I don't even know all of the details. The shit is convoluted. It's crazy. These guys were best friends. They were roommates at BYU. A lot of people thought that Dax Milne was going to be drafted by the Jets because of his relationship with Zach Wilson. And, you know, it's amazing to see how this thing is taking a turn for the worse. They no longer follow each other on social media. I would assume that they're no longer friends. So if you don't know the backstory behind the situation, apparently Zach Wilson had a girlfriend. And while he was with his girlfriend, and we've all seen his mom, and a lot of people were drooling over his mom on draft night. And so the whole cougar vibe is kind of permeating the walls of his house, right? So apparently, and I don't know what Dax Milne's mom looks like. I haven't seen any pictures. The salacious stuff I try to stay away from. I don't allow it to engulf me, because I literally found myself going down the rabbit hole yesterday, reading like a tweet about it, and then looking at the comments, and I literally spent like 7 minutes, and I was like, okay, this is what I don't want to do. I don't have time for this. So I try not to get too deep into the salacious, because it can send you down a rabbit hole that is unhealthy. Then you start looking up shit that you have no business looking up. And then next thing you know, a whole hour and a half has passed and you've done nothing but look at some, you know, gossip drama type shit that you find in the blogs. So I had to cut it short, but I got the gist of what was going on. Apparently, Zach Wilson got with Dak Milne's mom, right? Again, don't know how his mom looks. Don't know how that situation. That seems straight out of some Pornhub type stuff. Like, what are we doing, guy? You can't be you can't be banging your mom, your boy's mom, right? Your best friend's mom. You can't be doing that. So that's crazy in itself. But then in a strange plot twist, and I don't know if this was done vindictively or if he just was feeling her and he's like, yo, you know, Zach did you wrong. I'm gonna show you how you should be treated type of deal. Cause you know, dudes they see, like, you know, if your boy is a dog or not. Like, you know, if your boy ain't shit, but you're not, I mean, that's your boy. You ain't gonna tell the female that he ain't shit. You might be like, yo, you could do better than him. That's his way of saying, hey, this dude ain't shit. All right. And you probably don't need to be with him. But you're not gonna go flat out tell her, yo, he dogging you, he cheating on you, he doing this, he doing that. That's guy code. You're not gonna break that, right? But if you close enough to his girl, you be like, look, you could do better, man. Like, you don't need him. Anyway, maybe Dax was feeling that way about Zach's girl. Like, yo, she's a good girl. You doing her dirty. And so after the whole betrayal, like, you sleep with my moms, it's over, bro. We can't be friends anymore. That's sort of like LeBron James and Delonte West. Like, we can't be cool if you banging my moms. That's you crossed the line right there, right? And shame on you, mom, for allowing this to happen. I'm mad at you too. Like, I'm not letting you off the hook. You can't be sleeping with my best friend. So apparently mom's busted it wide open for Zach, and Dax was in his feelings, as he should be. I don't know if Zach was still with his girl while this was going on, and Dax told his girl what was going on, and to get for both of them to get some get back, they got with each other, or if she found out what he was doing, oh, ew, you're gross, broke up with him, and then Dax scooped her up, you know. And again, I don't know what Dax's mindset was when this all transpired. Was he looking for revenge? Or was he just like, yo, Zach's girl is a 10. She's bomb. She's bad. And if you don't want her, I'll take her. You know, and now that we're not cool no more, there are no lines here to be drawn, okay? I'm not crossing the line anymore because you already crossed the line, erased the line. There's no line that exists. All right. Now everything's inbounds. So He got with Zach Wilson's ex-girlfriend. He probably feels some type of way about that. You don't get to feel a type of way after you bang my mom. So Zach Wilson right now is being lauded as a hero. Everybody's calling him the GOAT, this, that, and the third. I know his ass better play well on the field, because if he does not, there are jokes that are lined up waiting for his ass if this thing goes south for him. I've got a lot of Zach Wilson cards that have a chance to be worth something. I need him to play well, but this does not bode well for him playing well going into the season, but we'll see what happens. It's amazing what New York will do to a Midwest kid, man. Turn his ass out. Got him sleeping with his homeboy's mom and in the blogs and all kinds of nonsense. But we'll see if Zach Wilson can find a way to play some good ball. So that's a whole little saga, man. You got, Zach Wilson, Zach, your mom's Wilson, banging Dax Mills' mom. Meanwhile, Dax Mill gets back at Zach Wilson by getting at his ex-girl. It's a nasty situation there. Yikes. And to think, just 6 months ago, they was probably best of friends. How in the hell does that happen? You got to look, and I've said this before, you keep your friends close and your enemies even closer. But you got to watch your friends, your quote-unquote friends, okay? If you trust them, right? And that's why I have a very tight-knit circle, because I don't trust a lot of people, right? Everybody has an ulterior motive. Everybody's got an agenda. Everybody wants something. So my antennas are always up. And I got no new friends, no new news for me. Same cats I've been rocking with since high school, same people I'm rocking with now. Because I don't trust people. Because people do stupid shit like that. However, you got to watch the company that you keep. Del Curry had to find that out the hard way. I don't know if you saw the situation with, Steph Curry's mom and dad. Obviously, they got a divorce, and she was banging one of their really good friends. And you could see all the signs, and Del Curry probably just ran through a bunch of stop signs and red lights. And and that relationship looked like it was going on for a very long time. And dudes are very ignorant, because when you're hurt like that and you feel betrayed, what do? You go and try to do the one thing you think is going to hurt those individuals. So what did Del Curry do? The same exact thing Dax Milne did. He went and got with the guy that she cheated with, which was one of his really good friends, was a really good family friend. He goes and gets with his ex-wife. So it's like they just swap partners. Shit's stupid. But anyway, watch your friends. Long story short, watch your friends. Okay. If you trust them, trust them. But if you got a sneaky suspension, watch your friends. Okay. Anyway, I digress. Crazy, crazy, crazy times, man. Crazy, crazy, crazy times. Anyway, let's see. Red Wings 01. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Red Wings 01. Right. Double up. Let me go ahead and double you up first, my guy. Red Wings 01 writes, the sheer amount of disrespect thrown at our players this year, even for the dumbest things. Hope they go out and punch the league in the mouth. I was just talking about that with Juan Gotti about, he was feeling like we were getting, especially a guy like Carson Wentz getting a worse rap because he played for the Commanders. And I didn't necessarily agree with that. I just think as a fan base, we're super sensitive about our players because so many bad things get said about the organization because of Daniel Snyder and all the things that are going on. And a lot of that, I can't defend them for that. A lot of that, vitriol is, I think, perfectly aimed and rightfully deserved. He has not been a good owner. He's not been a good human being. And people are calling him on his bullshit. And it's always something. And so it's so easy to not like players that play for that organization because of the guys at the top of it. But Ron Rivera, to his credit, has tried to do the best job he could. And I think he's done a solid job to this point of trying to rewrite the narrative, trying to give all these players and the coaching staff that has come on that has nothing to do with the past a fresh start and giving people a different outlook, a fresher outlook on this organization and what they're trying to do moving forward. But it's hard to escape the past when it's constantly being thrown in your face. That said, it's easy to look down upon Washington. We haven't won. You could frame it as all of those things I just said about the negativity off the field and having an owner that's easy to not like, and by virtue of that, you kind of get pegged into this birds of a feather flock together, and you kind of get drugged into this, just being a part of the organization. But we haven't won. All of that shit could be going on with Daniel Snyder. He could be a terrible owner, terrible off the field, not a good guy, this, that, and the third. But if we were winning, a lot of that stuff gets swept under the rug. A lot of that stuff, people just are going to be willing to deal with. But when you lose, and you lose in the manner that we have for as long as we have, and then you couple that with some of the things that have gone on off the field, it's easy for this organization to be a punching bag. So I don't think it's necessarily everyone's picking on us. Some of it is rightfully deserved, and then some of it is, hey, you guys have to win. You guys haven't won. You haven't been consistent, and because of that, you're an easy target. So we'll see what happens. I just know that there's a lot of energy this year. If you're a member of this fan base, you're excited, and it's positive energy. If you're outside of the fan base, it's still negative energy. So we're going to see which energy wins out. Thank you for the super chat. Red Wings 01. John Perez, my guy, JP, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Lou, JP. He said, first off, sup. It's good with you, JP. He says, secondly, LA could actually repeat in 22, but I've boldly got Denver winning it all. I think Denver's going to be in the mix. We'll talk more about the Broncos when we get to the AFC West, which will be on the next, not the next episode, the episode after that. But LA is going to be in the mix. They're going to be a good football team. They got a brutal schedule. I want to see how they navigate it, and I want to see how they play this year after having won the Super Bowl. It's so different being the hunter versus being the hunted. They've never been in this position before. They've never been at the top of the mountain, and now everyone's trying to knock them off. I want to see how they handle it. I could see them struggling a little bit in 2022. Navigating their schedule well enough to win that division, not by much, and not being a 1 or a 2 or even a 3 seed, but just like last year, being like a 4 seed, playing the 5 seed in the first round. I could see them being in that kind of a position and having to try to repeat from, off the pace a bit, having to go on the road and win some games like they did last year. But to your point, I think the AFC, honestly, I think the Super Bowl winner, it's 2 years in a row the NFC has captured the Super Bowl. I think an AFC team gets it this year, and Denver's going to be in that mix. Thank you for the super chat, JP. Overweight Western man. Double up, because we know who you really are. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, just had a long old debate about that with a buddy. He kept saying how Tyson Fury would win, blah, blah, blah. I was like, if Mike would land one body shot, honestly, if Mike could get inside, he would do damage enough to, I think, beat Tyson Fury. But if Fury could keep him at a distance, and Mike at times in his career struggled, like with Buster Douglas, struggled with guys with length, with the jab that could keep him at bay. If Mike can't get inside, Mike was a shorter fighter with shorter arms. He has to get inside to be able to do damage. If he can't get inside, then the advantage definitely goes to Tyson Fury, and it's not even close. So Condo P says Mormons gone wild. Yeah, it's crazy, man. You leave New York, you hit a couple of big cities, one in New York, the other in DC, and they don't know how to act no more, man. That's what happens when you haven't been exposed to a lot in your life, and then you finally get a little taste, and you lose your damn mind. Let's see. John Graves the third. Double up. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, John Graves the third writes. Mike Tyson didn't do well in fights that lasted longer than 5 rounds. So if Tyson Fury could tie him up in the early rounds, then they'd have early days, then he'd have a chance. Mike was definitely a guy to try to get you out of there in the first few rounds. He wasn't a big stamina guy. So if you could tire him out, get him to expend a lot of energy in the early rounds, you might be able to take advantage of him in the later rounds. But you got to get there first. That's the key. Is you got a lot of guys tried and failed miserably trying to get to the later rounds with Mike Tyson. So we'll see. We'll see. It's always fun, those kinds of debates. Anything in sports when you debate is fun, because especially when you playing those hypotheticals, like a lot of Ja Morant made a lot of news this week when he said he would cook Michael Jordan. I mean, if you watch the interview, he didn't, he said a lot of things, and then he said, I would have cooked him. But it's easy to say that. He'll never play against Michael Jordan. You say what you want to say. You can say, he's like, I'm a confident dude. I'm never going to say I'm not going to cook somebody. Cool. But, he might have cooked Michael Jordan. AI cooked Michael Jordan. But you know what else Mike did? He cooked AI, and he defended my AI as well. And and obviously he ended up getting the best of Allen Iverson. So it happens, it happens. Anyway, we'll never know what the outcome of that would have been, but it's fun to debate. Condo P says, what you know about Pornhub, Lou? Look, I wasn't always this guy, married with kids, with a beautiful wife that supplies me plentifully. I wasn't always that guy, man. I mean, we all been there. I shouldn't say that. I don't know. I can't speak for you. I'll speak for myself. Oh man, that's crazy. Let's see. I think we got another super chat here. We do. We got a couple more super chats actually. Hold on. Yeah, I doubled up for John, for JG3. Super chat here from 16 Devil Doc. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Shout out to your wife who writes, Lou, 16 Devil Doc. Since Ishmael Benitez super chatted you when his wife's water broke, I feel compelled to send you this while my wife's has her gallbladder removed. Hashtag dedication. You know what? I haven't seen IB since that whole ordeal. Hope his wife is doing well. Hopefully their child's birth went flawlessly. They have a beautiful young, child, and life is going well. It's always an adjustment, which is probably why we haven't heard from him, because having a newborn is no joke. I can attest to that, and as many of you out there can as well. So, yeah, we got a good chuckle out of that, and we don't know the situation. They could have been, in an ambulance. He could have been in the waiting room texting me that super chat. It just sounded like her water broke and she's like, hey, Ish, we have to go. And he's like, all right, let me just get this super chat in real quick. Like that's how it came off, right? Like there's literally amniotic fluid running down her leg, and he's getting the last super chat off as he's walking out the door. Hold on, babe. I just got to get in these last few characters, and then we're out of here. And that probably wasn't the way it went, but that's how it felt like it was going. So it just was funny. But hopefully your wife's gallbladder surgery goes well. They're able to remove it without any issues. She's able to come out of that thing healthy and better off because of it. Not quite the effect of IB sending a super chat as his wife's water was breaking, but not too far off. As you wrote, hashtag dedication. I'm here for all of it, man. Remember, I did a live stream after Washington beat the Las Vegas Raiders from the hospital. As you can hear the monitor beeping in the background. Like we all put in work at times, man. So I appreciate y'all matching my level of energy right there. I appreciate y'all for that, for sure. Fat Man on Wheelchair, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Fat Man on Wheelchair writes, it was his mom's best friend, not Dax's mom. Okay, so it was Dax's mom's best friend, or from what I gathered, it was Dax's mom. But I told you I didn't dig as deep into it, and then I went to the comment section. If I cared enough, I would have gotten all the facts and been able to. But I don't, like I said, I don't try to stay, because it can send you down a nice little rabbit hole, one that I'm not trying to go down, because sometimes when you go down those holes, you don't find your way up. But I do know somebody's mom got banged. I do know that, by Zach Wilson. I don't know exactly whose mom and what relation that person's mom had to Dax Milne. I do know he ended up with Zach Wilson's ex-girlfriend. I do know those things happened, but it's just a crazy story nonetheless. They're no longer friends, it sounds like. And, you know, at the end of the day, that's probably the saddest part about all of this, is those two guys were best of friends. They helped each other get to the NFL. Dax Milne's production in Zach Wilson's final year at BYU is a huge part of the reason he ended up being the number 2 overall pick in the draft. And the same can be said for Dax Milne. Zach Wilson's ability to throw the football is a huge part of the reason Dax Milne was even drafted and selected into the NFL in the 7th round by the Washington Commanders. So they have so much that they owe to one another. They were the best of friends. They were roommates. And then a situation like this tears them apart. That sucks. Maybe they'll be able to kind of hash, patch that up a bit down the road. But again, if it's Dax's mom, it ain't no going back. If it's Dax's mom's best friend, we might be able to be friends down the road from that. I don't, and again, I don't know how close Dax is to that woman, but I don't get as bent out of shape if it's my mom's best friend that you banged. If you banged my mom, yeah, there's no turning back. Anyway, I digress. Richard Kalewarts, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Richard writes, what do you think Washington's record is going to be? You called it year before, and do you think Chase is going to be 100% when he comes back? I will give you what I think Washington's record is going to be when I do the Super Friends stream on July the 21st. I'll be promoting the hell out of that. It's going to be a big stream. It's going to be when we do our season predictions. That's usually the most volatile and explosive show in terms of the Super Friends, because everybody's angling and making a case for their team to be this record and that record. And we'll see what happens in the upcoming season and who ends up being right. But I'll save my record prediction. You can kind of tell I've pretty much, without saying it, said what I think the record's going to be multiple times. But I say that, and then I get to the stream with the Super Friends, and all of a sudden we're 13-4. That's not going to happen. Right? I'm not going to allow that to happen. But stranger things have happened. I've talked about, we'll win 7 or 8 games, get to the stream, and now we're 10-7. So which is what I did last year, and I knew better. I knew better than 10-7. We had Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback. I knew better, and I did it anyway. So, and the whole time I'm like, we're 8-9. That's probably where we're going to be. Best case scenario, we're 10-7, but everything has to fall in place for us. Everything has to go right, and nothing went right. So, anyway, I digress. What do I think Chase is going to be when he comes back? I think he's going to be 100%. Why? Because I think they're going to slow play his return. I don't think he'll be ready the first week of the season. I don't think he'll be ready for the second or third or the fourth game of the season. I think he's going to be on the PUP list to start the season off. I think he's going to miss the first 6 games. I think he won't play until week 7. And that's their way of taking their time with Chase, making sure that he's 100% healthy, that there are no setbacks, and that they don't rush him, because they see him as a franchise type of player. So they want to make sure that they do right by him. So we'll see how his rehab process is going. Clearly, he's out and about. He's working out. We saw him with Von Miller getting in some work. He's coming along, but it's one thing to be out there, doing drills and things of that nature. It's another thing to be stopping and starting and cutting and doing those things on that knee and feeling confident about it. You're not really going to gain the full confidence of that knee until you actually go out and play. Somebody falls by your knee. The first couple of times somebody falls around your knee or there's traffic around your knee, you're going to be nervous if you're Chase Young. So he's not going to be playing, I think, at the top of his game right out of the gate. I think it won't be until he gets, falling on once or twice, gets hit, somebody cuts him, and he's able to get right back up like normal. And then he's going to realize, okay, it's good. Now I can go balls to the wall. But I think he'll be healthy when he comes back. Will he have his explosiveness? Will he have the quickness and some of those things? I don't know. Everybody responds to an injury and surgery differently. Adrian Peterson tore his ACL on the field in Washington late in the season in 2011 and came back in 2012 and ran for 2,000 yards and led the Minnesota Vikings essentially to the playoffs by himself, put them on his back with, a slew of quarterbacks under center, including Tavares Jackson and shucks, what was the dude's name? That was awful. Christian Ponder at quarterback. So I don't even know if Tavares Jackson was on that team or not. They had the other dude that was at quarterback, Joe something, that played with Carolina too, that stunk, that had to start the playoff game versus Green Bay. He was awful. But Adrian Peterson ran for 2,000 yards. So everybody's built differently, So we'll see what happens. $1,800 shots. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "Job meant cooking for Jordan. Fire up the grill, Lou." When he said it, I was like, bro, that was so unnecessary. But I knew where he was coming from. And I talk about this all the time. It's a thing that I've talked about ad nauseum. And I say it's necessary. Some guys can take it a little too far, but it is necessary. It is a necessary ingredient to the success of high-level athletes. It is called athletic arrogance. And you must have it. How much do you have? And how much do you display? You could be Kawhi Leonard, where you don't display any of it, but you have it. Clearly, he thinks he's better than this guy, that guy, and he's willing to challenge and take on the challenge of defending this guy or trying to dunk on that guy. But he's not going to tell you, I'm better than you. He's just going to show you. But he's got athletic arrogance. And then you got guys that are brash that'll let you know, I'm better than you, like Anthony Edwards. He'll tell you, tell anybody, I'm the best. I'm the best guy in the league. Anthony Edwards thinks he's the best player in the NBA right now. And he'll tell you, I'm the best player in the NBA. He made his greatest list of NBA players, greatest starting five, and he was on it. So, some guys will let you know about their athletic arrogance and others not so much. But everyone has it. Ja has it, just like the next man has it. And, you don't want to bow to anybody. You think you can do anything, but he didn't want the Jordan smoke. He really didn't want the Jordan smoke. I'm like, yeah, you might cook him. What do you think he's going to do to you on offense? So, still my guy, though. Let's see. Take Command for Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Take Command for Life, writes, all right, but for real, now I got Cardinals at 11-6, Rams at 10-7, Niners at 9-8, and finally the Seahawks at 4-13. I think the Cardinals are much more experienced now. They may be. They've lost some critical components of their roster. They're going to have to ask a lot more of Rondale Moore this year because there's no more Christian Kirk. He was a huge part of their offense. So now Rondale Moore in year 2 is going to have to step up, play a much bigger role. You got Hollywood Brown, and that's great. And you got AJ Green still there, and you'll get DeAndre Hopkins back at some point. So you've got a bunch of dudes that can play ball, but everybody's got to stay healthy. Everybody's got to do their part. And then defensively, I feel like, and they also lost Chase Edmonds, who was a huge part of that offense, catching it out of the backfield, running it too. That's going to be a piece that they're going to miss. I'm not sure if they drafted or they went out and got a guy in free agency that can catch it, but that's a huge part of that offense, having a running back that can catch out of the backfield. And then obviously losing Chandler Jones, huge on the defensive side of football. That's a lot of production that they're going to be missing defensively off the edge. I want to see if they can get to the quarterback. That's tough. That's tough. So we'll see what happens. I like your records, and I've got the exact same thing, except I don't think the Seahawks are going to be as bad as everyone else does. And I flip-flop the Cardinals and the Rams. But I can see the Rams going 10-7. I can see the Cardinals going 11-6. I see the 49ers being right in that same area, 9-8. And I think the Seahawks are going to be a little bit better than people think. They've got some winnable games on their schedule. It's still tough to play in Seattle. I could see them winning some games and beating one or two teams in their division and ended up with 6 wins. But we'll see what happens. Take command for life. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Take command for life. Who writes, Zach Wilson went a couple miles past the line. Again, I don't know all the particulars of who is who and what is what. But again, and I'm not here to tell someone that they can't go stalking a cougar and be on the prowl and go bag them a cougar. If you like older women, okay. You like experienced women, so be it. I'm who am I to tell you who you should and shouldn't knock down? What I'm saying though is you got to make sure you're selective and you know who you're knocking down. You can't be just. Have you ever watched Ballers? When Denzel Washington's son, I forgot what his name was on the show, knocked down his teammate's mom, and he didn't know initially that was his mom, and then he found out, and he felt bad, but he was still knocking his mom down. Like after you find out that you've been flagrant, you can't continue to be flagrant, right? And so then they started doing stuff to him to let him know that wasn't cool. Again, like you got to set boundaries and you got to know who you're knocking down. And I don't know. Again, I don't know the particulars of the situation, but it's weird. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, man. Zach Wilson, the Cougar Hunter, sounds like. Joe Rockhead J, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB Rights. It ain't no fun if the homies can't have none. And he said that was from Dax. Oh, man. Y'all are stupid. I cannot with y'all, man. I cannot with y'all. Anyway, I digress. John Graves III, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, John Graves III. JG3 writes, great example of athletic arrogance is Joe Jacoby and the Hogs telling the other team their play when they came to the line of scrimmage and still getting 6 to 10 positive yards per play. Absolutely. Them telling Randy White, we're running it right at you. Right at you. And then displacing him and running right at him and getting 6, 7, 8 yards. And teams knew what was coming. They knew what was coming. And they still couldn't stop it. So that's a bitter pill to swallow. But like you said, that's athletic arrogance at its finest. Ain't a damn thing you can do about it. So looking forward to seeing if he finally gets into the Hall of Fame because he deserves it. I think he's going to get in this year. I really, truly do. It pains me every year that he doesn't get in. It's like a piece of him dies every year he doesn't get in. He deserves it. He should have already gone in. He shouldn't have had to go the route that he's ultimately going to have to go now. which is on this like old timers list. I forgot what they actually call it, but it's after you fall off of the original ballot, you go to this secondary ballot where the old timers are, and eventually he's going to get in on that ballot. But that sucks. He shouldn't have had to do that. You know, Russ Grimm didn't have to do that. He shouldn't have had to do that. Anyway, I digress. Thank you for the super chat, John Graves the third. Take Command for Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Take Command for Life writes, either way, Mormons gone wild. That's what my girl Condo P said earlier. Mormons gone wild. It's crazy how all of that is going. So anyway, I digress. Let's see. 1,800 shots. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. 1,800 shots. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, keep up the good work, Lou. And I know you don't get political. I just want to say hashtag free Britney. You know, I was really mean to Brittany Griner when she first got apprehended by the Russians. I was disappointed in her, knowing the situation, knowing what was going on in the world, and trying to do something that is illegal in that country. And look, in the grand scheme of things, they're using her as a pawn. You know, they're trying to bait the U.S. into doing something they don't want to do, or making some kind of concession that they don't want to make. They're making this situation out to be something a lot bigger than what it is. What she was trying to do wasn't something that was all that egregious, that didn't really deserve the kind of punishment that she's getting herself into. They are taking this a lot further than they need to. But I was so upset at her for really putting herself in that position. You know, how badly do you want to get that stuff home, that you're willing to put your livelihood on the line and put yourself on the line to try to smuggle it home? You know, it didn't make a lot of sense. Then it doesn't make a lot of sense now. That said, nobody deserves what she's, you know, having to go through right now. She should be back on U.S. soil. I don't personally love Brittany Griner, the person, but she's still an American. She should still be home. And this is ridiculous. And hopefully sooner rather than later, she'll be back on U.S. soil. But it's dumb. How that situation is going is ridiculous. Take Command for Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Take Command for Life writes, my brother-in-law is a Jets fan and we're dying. Yeah. Zach Wilson is a OG, man. He is a straight G, not an OG, a G. A lot of people are giving him GOAT treatment. You're seeing it was dumb. People are just making all kinds of jokes. They had NFL lists. And so they had the elites. And then above the elites was Zach Wilson, right? He was in the category and it's like GOAT. And it was just him. And then it was a list of elites and guys that you're still trying to figure out. And then under the guys that you were still trying to figure out, it was just Carson Wentz, and it was just him by himself. So I'm like, this list was just out of bounds. It was crazy. It didn't make any sense. But that was the point, right? So yeah, it's just so much craziness going on with this Zach Wilson situation. And the crazy part is the Jets actually have a chance to be good this year. The last thing they need is a distraction. The Jets media, because it's New York, they're just sloppy enough. Just reckless and quirky, but also hard enough to ask him about it. Now it's up to him to deflect and go about it, take the high road type of deal. I'm not talking about that or whatever the situation is, however you want to phrase it. But I think he's going to get asked about it. This isn't Washington. This isn't Cincinnati. It's not Indianapolis. I think somebody's going to ask him about that shit. It'll be really low budget to ask him, but that's New York and that's the media there. I think somebody's going to ask him about it. I don't think it's going to be a major distraction, but it's going to be a distraction. And how about this? The locker room is a sacred place where all bets are off and anything goes, right? Except for banging somebody's mom. and wife, family is off limits. We all know that. But could you imagine being, Zach Wilson in the locker room? You don't think the other guys are gonna, give him a hard time about that? Like, you got to be kidding me. They're gonna kill him in the locker room for that. Like, even if it's funny, they're gonna kill him. And y'all said it's not Dax Milne's mom. Whew, that's a relief, because if it was his mom, I don't think guys in our locker room would necessarily kill him. But you're not allowed to make any jokes, because the easy comeback is your mom. You won't say that to Zach Wilson after he banged your mom. It's too many easy one-liners that could be said. And Dax Milne doesn't strike me as a dude that is running his lip anyway. So I don't think he would catch strays or anything, or even be caught in the line of fire, or even put himself in a position to get, lit up and hot with a few, heaters coming his way. But yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy. Crazy. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Metaphor writes, glad 90 greatest added RG3. Vote early and often. Let me say this to you, because I know you're a big Robert Griffin III fan. Me and you have had conversations about Robert Griffin III. We agree to disagree on some of those conversations. Today, I told you, this is what happens when you go on social media. Sometimes you go down the rabbit hole. I went down the rabbit hole, but it was a pleasant rabbit hole. And I was on Facebook, and I was scrolling down my timeline. I hadn't been on Facebook in ages, so there was a lot to see. And I ran into a repost of a Washington fan, because I think I'm a part of a Washington group on Facebook. And somebody reposted Robert Griffin III's highlights from 2012. Every single highlight, most of them throwing, a lot of them running, every game, every highlight. And it was just reliving that 2012 season all over again. And it all came rushing back to me. And there were two things that were abundantly clear. And really, there are so many takeaways from those highlights, but that season that, weren't as fresh in my mind, but actually watching those highlights just brought all of that rushing back. The first thing is that, man, was Robert Griffin III good in that season, or what? And the next thing that I'm about to say is going to diminish how good he was, and rightfully so. But this is the thing you have to understand. Even though the offense was as simplistic as it gets, I mean, they dumbed it down to as basic an offense as you can get, as vanilla, and it was amazing that teams had trouble stopping it. It's as if they had never seen anything quite like this before. You see it in college all the time. And even some NFL teams, like Colin Kaepernick, had run some form of that the year prior. And Kyle and Mike Shanahan just took it a step further in 2012. But Colin Kaepernick ran some of that stuff in 2011 in San Francisco. That said, he was so good and he was so confident. And some of the throws, you can say what you want, they were tight window throws. I always go back to the Santana Moss throw. He had two of them in that season that were just gorgeous. The first of which was against the Dallas Cowboys right before halftime. We're up 21-3. There's about 9 seconds left in the first half. If we don't complete this pass, we're going to have to settle for a field goal. He rolls out to his right. Santana Moss is running a little speed out. He goes and takes it up the sideline. The defender is facing Santana, so he has no idea the ball is coming. As soon as Santana turns around, pivots, the ball is right literally on the outside part of his 8, like in the perfect location. All Santana has to do is literally cradle the ball, get both feet down as he falls down out of bounds. You can't throw it. He couldn't have walked up and handed it to him any better than that throw. And then he had an equally gorgeous, if not even better, throw against the Philadelphia Eagles, the first game back after the injury he sustained against Baltimore. He missed the Cleveland game. His first game back was against Philadelphia on the road. Eagles were terrible that year. And so it was the perfect game for him to come back in. And he throws a corner route to Santana Moss before Santana even comes out of his break. Santana looks up as he's getting close to the pylon, and the ball's falling right down like a chocolate drop right out of the sky. I mean, it was drugstore cotton, soft, feathery touch. Catches the football right as he's going out of bounds, drags the second foot, first foot's planted down right before the out of bounds line. Again, he couldn't have walked it up to him and handed it to him any better than he dropped it in the bucket there. Robert was making extraordinary throws. He was making extraordinary plays. His confidence was through the roof. There were so many times we killed him in the latter years in Washington for having a lack of pocket presence. He had pocket presence in his rookie season. He would escape rushers that he didn't see. He would elude rushers and extend plays. Some of his best throws were, make a defender miss, dance around, find a guy down the field. I always talk about that Logan Paulson throw against the Giants in the Meadowlands, 4th and 7 or 10 late. It was 4th and 10 late in that ball game. We're down 4, I think. We had to have it, and he made it happen. And then he dropped a gem to Santana on that same drive to give us the lead. And then Victor Cruz, we got hit by Victor Cruz. Right on literally the next play. They got the ball back, the Cruz for 80. Touchdown. He was so good. Robert was so good that year. And he was so confident. He was so accurate. I have to give him credit for that. Now, a lot of these windows were he was back at Baylor. God, these guys are open. But then there were tight window throws like the Pierre Garçon throw against Dallas on Thanksgiving, where there's a guy falling back into that window and he's got to throw it behind Pierre to avoid it getting tipped or picked off. Pierre jumps behind him, snatches out of the air, and then runs for 58 yards for a touchdown. Robert was extremely accurate in that rookie season. It was crazy. But for as good as he was, Kyle and Mike Shanahan were even better. The offense that they devised, the way, literally you're watching Robert Griffin III throw the same 3 routes over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. That same drift route, that same corner route, and you're watching him throw the same slant and then the deep ball off a play action fake and hit Aldrick Robinson wide ass open down the field for a touchdown. You're watching him throw the same 3-4 plays over and over and over again. All right. In the red zone, he ran quarterback draw 50,000 times for touchdowns. At some point, defenses have to know we get to the 7-yard line, they're going to take a 3-step drop, and then Robert's going to take off. Get that running back to be his lead block and try to get to the end zone. At what point do you say, okay, that's just not happening? I don't know. It's they were just defenses were so slow to react to what we were doing. And you had to pick your poison because read option was prevalent. If you played the run, he pull it out, throw the football. This was the RPO really before RPO became a real thing in the NFL. They were the first ones to really do it. It was crazy. Mike and Kyle were just flawless in that season. God, they were good. They made Fred Davis and Logan Paulson and Leonard Hankerson and Josh Morgan and Aldrick Robinson look like stars. I mean, Logan Paulson and Fred Davis were eating. I'm talking about eating good. I'm talking about Church's chicken grease dripping down your jaw good. Pollard's chicken. Eating good. They had me saying, man, Fred Davis is a beast. And Fred Davis, to his credit, Fred Davis was a hell of an athlete and would have been a hell of an NFL tight end if he would have been able to lay off the weed. He was a really good athlete. And Fred Davis, when he was healthy and he was locked in, he showed it. He was really good in that 2012 season was Fred Davis. But the way he was, Evan Royster, I mean, some of the names from that season were just fun to rehash, but God, guys were wide open. They were so good. Kyle and Mike were. Jesus. it was fun to watch. It was fun to go down memory lane, and it made the Seattle Seahawks playoff loss that much more gut wrenching because we were up 14-0. They couldn't stop us. We went right down the field the first two possessions. I remember that game so vividly in my head because I remember turning to my dad and saying, "They can't stop us. We're gonna blow them out." And then Robert's injury changed everything. Anyway, I digress. Take Command for Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Take Command for Life. Writes, Jet QBs are wild. First Sam Darnold, now this. And remember, Geno Smith got punched in the jaw by a defensive teammate. Remember that? These Jets quarterbacks be on one, man. Yeah, it's just crazy. Crazy. Anyway, I digress. Let's see. Tony P56, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Tony P56 writes, "You working hard tonight?" I love it, man. I love it. Guest appearance and the show. All in the day's work, man. All in the day's work. Thank you for the super chat, Tony P56. Greatly appreciate you, man, as always. Take Command for Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Take Command for Life writes, "Man, I wish we were playing the Jets week 1. Be careful what you ask for, man. You just might get it. Who knows? Zach might be ready to unleash a can of ass whooping on somebody, man. A good can of ass whooping on somebody. Who knows? That first team might get 42 dropped on their skull for all of the foolishness that he's had to endure this offseason. Or maybe the Cougar ain't growling his way no more. I don't know. You never know. We'll see. Joe Rockhead J, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy Joe Rockhead J writes, "At Madu Williams letting Cruz run past him, man. All I saw was Williams 41 running as fast as he possibly could, not gaining any ground." And I'm like, no, these bastards didn't. But I think it was a combination between him and Josh. What was his name? Josh. Oh man, he was number 26 too. Josh something. I always remember him saying "Dirty Turk" when we played on like Sunday night or whatever. He's from Maryland. I can't think of his name, but he turned him over to Madu Williams, and he just got cooked. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. He got roasted, and it just happened so fast. You weren't even able to even enjoy what was just one of the most epic drives in recent memory. Like that drive, we went for it on 4th down. He escapes a rusher, runs backward, runs forward, falls down. As he's falling down, throws it to Logan Paulson on 4th and 10 to extend the drive. And then he has a run of like maybe 17 yards down the sideline. And then he hits the Tanner man over the outside shoulder down the middle of the field, essentially for the touchdown, about 35, 38 yards out. Beautifully thrown football. And as you're jumping up and down, like, hell yeah, we about to beat these bastards. And, there's all these, memories of, games gone awry in the Meadowlands. Here's an opportunity to really stick it to the Giants and then one play in on the next possession. I mean, you didn't even get to enjoy taking the lead. Victor Cruz is taking off 80-yard touchdown. You got to be kidding me. Josh Wilson, thank you, Condo P. It was Josh Wilson, man. Sheesh. It's crazy. Anyway. All right. Y'all are wild. I just know that. Y'all are crazy. Let's get to our final segment of the show. Garbage time. So the Seahawks reportedly have done film work on quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo as they look to maybe do the same thing look to do the same thing that the Panthers have done, which is kind of solidify the quarterback position by bringing in a veteran that you trust, or at least gives you better upside. This is an intriguing dynamic because the 49ers are out of options, right? They would much rather see Deshaun Watson get suspended for the year and the Browns say, hey, what can we give you for Jimmy Garoppolo? They would much rather do that deal. That's not going to happen, though. We've talked about Deshaun Watson. I don't think he's going to be suspended for any more than, 4 games max, if that. And so I don't think the Browns are going to do anything rash. That's why they got Jacoby Brissett for this exact type of scenario where he's got to play 2, 3, 4 games. He can get them by until Deshaun Watson's back in the lineup. So I don't think the Browns are going to come calling. Outside of, another team having some kind of catastrophe at the quarterback position, I don't see the 49ers getting a deal for Jimmy Garoppolo. They want to move him. They want to get something for him. They don't want to just release him, but they'll do it if they have to. And then enter in Seattle, who's like, hey, we can use a quarterback. And to me, this is the dilemma that is posed to the San Francisco 49ers. How bad do you want to recoup some value for Jimmy Garoppolo? Because if you truly think Jimmy can play, if you think highly of Jimmy Garoppolo, and you really think that he can help the team that you're sending him to, you don't send him in the division to the Seattle Seahawks. They're dead this year. The Seattle Seahawks are absolutely dead in the water. Now, you could release Jimmy Garoppolo and he could make a beeline for Seattle, and you could say to yourself, well, he still ended up in Seattle anyway. And so we should have just gotten something for him. So there's that argument as well, because Jimmy Garoppolo is going to go where he feels like he's going to have a chance to play. He's not going to have a chance to start anywhere else other than Seattle. Period. End of discussion. Every other team in the league has their starting quarterback already, or they're having a competition for that position, and he's not going to be able to jump into the fray and win a quarterback competition this summer. So he only has one destination where he can ultimately be the starter, even if it's not week 1 by week 3 or 4, and that's Seattle. So to me, if you're San Francisco, you're kind of caught in between a rock and a hard place. But here's the thing. If trading Jimmy Garoppolo to the Seahawks makes them a much better football team, do you do it? I mean, clearly the answer is no. You're not looking to help out the competition in the division, a team you have to play twice, a guy that knows the inner workings of your offense and what you like to do. There's so many things that go with the quarterback. It's one thing, we always talk about a guy having his brain picked. Oh, they got this receiver right before the season started because we play them in week 1. They want to pick his brain. Nobody knows the inner workings of a building and an offense, and hell, even the defense to a certain extent, like the quarterback does, especially one that's starting. So there would be a lot of intel that he would be able to provide Seattle with if he ended up on that roster. And there'd be a lot of quirks and things he'd be able to say, hey, this is what they like to do when they get into this kind of formation, or they give you this look. This is what they're trying to get to. He'd be able to give them a lot of pointers and tips. But also, he'd be an upgrade over the 2 guys that they currently have at the quarterback position. And as I've already mentioned, the Seahawks have talent on offense. If you insert the right quarterback, they're not trash anymore. And I'm not saying Jimmy Garoppolo's that guy, but you can do a lot worse at the quarterback position than Jimmy Garoppolo. So there's that side of the equation. But then also, if you think Seattle is good, you don't want to give them Jimmy Garoppolo. But if you think Seattle is trash, you don't think much of them, and you're like, shit, we'll give you Jimmy Garoppolo. You still ain't going to do shit. Then you'll give it to him anyway. I liken it to the Donovan McNabb trade with Washington. Andy Reid knew Donovan McNabb's best football had come and gone. That and the fact that he didn't fear Washington. He thought this was a downtrodden franchise that wasn't going to be able to take Donovan McNabb and shine him up and turn him back into the McNabb of old. They weren't going to be able to surround him with enough, parts offensively or defensively to make that situation work. So he didn't feel threatened by trading him within the division. And rightfully so. Donovan McNabb did not work out for Washington back in 2000, and I think it was 10. But they still traded for him anyway. And so it was a mess. and Rex Grossman ended up having to come in, and it was I think the beginning, probably the inner workings of what would become Rex versus John Beck. The good old days. But I liken it to that. If they think Garoppolo isn't good, or they think the Seahawks stink, and whether they give them Garoppolo or not doesn't matter, they're not going to be any good, then they'll trade him there anyway. But if they really think Jimmy Garoppolo is good, or he can help them, and they got a good roster, and all they need is an upgrade at the quarterback position, you can't trade him. If he goes there after you release him and he signs with the Seahawks, so be it. You might be kicking yourself, oh, I could have got a fifth round pick or whatever, a conditional fifth round pick. But the fact of the matter is, you got an opportunity to probably sweep the Seahawks if you just leave them as is at the quarterback position. They made a conscious decision to pass on the quarterback position as a whole this year when they traded Russell Wilson and got Drew Lock in exchange and brought back Geno Smith and didn't draft a quarterback, which I don't blame them for not drafting a quarterback. But when they decided to do that, they passed, willingly passed on the quarterback position and said, we know the risks, we know the rules, we know the parameters, we know what we're getting ourselves into by running it essentially back with Geno Smith and adding Drew Lock to the mix. We know what we're getting ourselves into, and it's not pretty. And if that's what they're signing up for, you got to allow yourself and your young quarterback to take advantage of that and get 2 wins up off of them, And if the whole division wants to run a train on them and they go 0-6, so be it. But if you give them Jimmy Garoppolo, if you trade them just because, all in the name of wanting a conditional 5th or 6th round pick, all in the name of getting one extra lousy draft pick at the back end of day 3, and they're better because of it, and you lose a game to them and you end up 9-8 instead of 10-7, and you miss the playoffs by a game, shame on you. And you deserve it. So there's Seattle doing their film work on Jimmy Garoppolo. Look, Jimmy Garoppolo is Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy G is Jimmy G. Like, I don't want to blow this out of proportion and make it seem like Jimmy G is this all-world quarterback to go in there and all of a sudden change the game for Seattle, and it's like Russell Wilson never left. That's not what I'm saying. He's clearly an upgrade over what they have, though. And I said they were a 6-win team with the combination of Drew Lock and Geno Smith. You add in Jimmy G, and he's healthy, with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Dwayne Eskridge and some of the other guys that they're able to put on the football field. You allow them to actually have a quarterback that can make some throws, has a quick release, and can get it to DK and get him in space, get it to Tyler Lockett, and get it to – all of those guys can run. All of those guys are sub 4.4s. Do you really want to allow them to have a competent quarterback? 49ers hold the key there. That's going to be worth watching because they desperately want to get rid of Jimmy G. They desperately want to move on from him. So we will see what happens with that situation. Let's see. All right. Got a couple super chats to round out the show. Take Command for Life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Take Command for Life writes, breaking news, Lamar Jackson unable to play week 1 because his mom was injured right before the game by Jet star quarterback Zach Wilson. that would never happen. But that's the kind of jokes you're going to get. Those are the kinds of easy, low-hanging fruit that exist because of what Zach Wilson has done. So, and what's out there. And again, I don't care who you knocking off. Keep that shit in-house. Why do we know that you banging somebody's mom? Why is that even out for the masses and public consumption? I don't know if Dax Milne had anything to do with that. Probably his girlfriend. These girls, they're scorned and they feel the need to flap their gums, whatever. But why is this even out? I don't know. Stop asking. I don't know how I got out. Anyway. Take command for life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Take command for life rights. Smash that like button like Zach smashing moms. Y'all heard the man. If y'all haven't already done so, what are y'all waiting on? Smash the like button like Zach is out here smashing moms. Y'all know what it is. Hit the like button, subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Thank you for that. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, I predict Jimmy trade to Pats. Bill gets his boy back. If they didn't have Mac Jones, I would say that was a realistic possibility. But once they got Mac Jones back, that's dead. They don't need Jimmy Garoppolo back in New England because they got their starting quarterback of the future, and I think they just drafted a quarterback that can be his backup as well. So. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Metaphor writes, Zach's a member of the cherry popping squad on the DL. This is what I'm talking about. Y'all take it, and then y'all take it to that next level. I can't with y'all, man. I can't with y'all. I'm not fooling with y'all, man. I'm not. And this is what I'm talking about. You see how easy these jokes are just coming off? Like, can you imagine being in that locker room? God forbid the Jets get off to a 1-6 start. Oh my God, the jokes are just gonna free flow. Oh my, he really needs to play well. He really, and you know he's gonna go to an opposing stadium, and there's gonna be signs about him banging somebody's mom. I don't know if they're gonna allow that in the stadium or what, but they're gonna be signs about, hey Zach, are you gonna bang my mom too? Like, this is inevitable now, right? He better play well. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say to him is he better play well this year. He better play well. Oh, Condo P, thank you for bringing that up. I did mean to mention that the Patriots traded N'Keal Harry to the Bears today, and that was one of those under the radar trades. I think they got like a 7th rounder, conditional 7th or something like that. He wanted a fresh start. Remember, he wanted to be traded last offseason. And the Bears, I talked about them not doing nearly enough this offseason to help Justin Fields. This is a small step in the right direction, but it's a step nonetheless. I'll take it because the list of receivers that they have in Chicago, I mean, if one or two of those dudes pan out, they might actually be okay. But Darnell Mooney's a stud. But after him, they got the kid from Kansas City, Pringle, right? And I don't know what Byron Pringle is outside of, Kansas City playing with Patrick Mahomes. Is he any good, outside of Kansas City? We'll see. They just drafted Velus Jones, receiver out of Tennessee, who's more like Cordero Patterson, just a do-it-all type of guy. Less of a actual receiver, more of a, hey, just get it in my hands and I can make something happen. Dominant return guy. He's going to be electrifying to watch, but I don't necessarily know if he's an electrifying wide receiver. And then now you add N'Keal Harry, and then they got a bunch of guys, Equinemius St. Brown, a bunch of NFL retreads that are, dying for a second opportunity after having failed stops initially where they were. Add N'Keal Harry to that list of, they got at least 5 dudes that were drafted on other teams that they thought these guys were going to be good, and they turned out to be either average or subpar. Add him to the list of those guys in Chicago. It's a mess, but we'll see if Justin Fields can clean it up. I'm not happy about it, but this is an upgrade over some of the guys that they had on the back end of that roster. You're talking about a former first-round pick, whether he deserved to be one or not is debatable, but you're talking about a former first-round pick in N'Keal Harry. So I like the move on the part of the Bears. Doesn't cost you a lot, and you get to kick the tires on a guy that had a lot of upside coming into the league that hasn't performed at the level that we thought was capable, and now he gets a new lease on life. We'll see if he can take advantage of it or not. Thank you for that, Condo P. Joe Rockhead J. I think a lot of you forgot that the Patriots traded for Devontae Parker. Like, they got a lot of receivers in New England, got a lot of receivers. So they didn't need N'Keal Harry anymore. Joe Rockhead J, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Joe Rockhead J writes, do you think Wentz gets anything past 3 years? If he plays well, you're talking about on an extension? I don't know if they go any longer than 3 years. It might be a 3-year extension, We'll see. I just it's hard to lock yourself in for more than 3 years with a guy that's only done it for 1 year. You kind of want him to prove it multiple times, but if he plays well, you want to go ahead and lock him up now. So I think 3 years is a good number. Then you come back. If he plays well and continues, then you come back to the table, 2 years down the road, 2-3 years down the road. Take command for life. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, Mama, Mama, I'll bang you. That's Zach Wilson. Let me get out of here, man. Y'all got me up here tripping, man. Anyway, y'all get out of here, man. That's gonna do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me here on this Tuesday night. I told you this was gonna be a crazy show because of the Zach Wilson thing. I knew y'all was gonna take it there, man. So I look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Thursday. We got a lot coming down the pipeline. Stay tuned, man. There is a lot cooking in the lab here on the Louie T Network that I have in store for y'all. Y'all are gonna love it. So if you're out there, stay tuned, continue to support. I really do appreciate each and every single one of y'all for everything that you guys have done and continue to do for the Louie T Network. With that said, you guys take care. You know what it is. Get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. God bless and good night.
LouieTeeNetwork.